We had introduced what is the nervous system, the central nervous system, as well as the peripheral nervous system. We made all classifications under the nervous system, and now we need to get deeper now and try to look at the brain, because the brain makes up, or it forms a part of the central nervous system. In fact, the brain is the most important part of the entire body, as I've already mentioned before. Okay, so uh, now the brain has got different parts and it has got a couple of different functions. So each and every part of the brain will have its unique function. So we can say that the brain does quite a couple of things. In fact, it does most of the things inside your body. Okay. So now, as I've already told you guys, that for the brain to be protected, it is protected by membranes that are known as meninges. And then those meninges, they surround and they protect the brain and the spinal cord as a whole. So basically, they protect and they surround and protect the brain as a whole. And furthermore, guys, the brain is actually inside the skull. That's another thing. So it is protected by this cranium. So we can mention that and say that the brain is protected by the cranium. So that's one other thing to mention. The brain is protected by the cranium. So we can say that there are three things, or we can say that there are three ways in which the brain is protected. So your brain is protected in three ways. It is protected by the cranium. It is protected by the meninges. We have got meninges as well as the cerebrospinal fluid. So there are three things that protect the brain. You guys already know what the cranium is. The cranium is simply the skull. You don't call it the skull, guys. You call it the cranium. All right. The cranium is referring to the bone that is making the shape of your head. Okay. Your skull. The Zulu Kakai. But you're talking about the skull. It is the one that is covering your brain. Because if I beat your head right now, I'm just gonna feel the cranium, just gonna feel the bone, right? So now the brain has got the main part. All right. So the main part of the brain, it is known as the cerebrum. So we're gonna start here at the cerebrum, which is going to be labeled here as part A in this case. So this is cerebrum. Okay. So the cerebrum, it is the biggest part of the brain. Basically, it is the brain itself. Okay. So when we are looking here carefully, let me just go back to the diagram so that you guys can be able to identify. All of this part here is the cerebrum. All of this part here is the cerebrum. So the cerebrum is kind of the main part of the brain, or the biggest part of the brain, or the biggest section, or whatever you can call it. But basically, that is the main part, or you can say it is the biggest part of the brain. It is known as the what? The cerebrum. All right. What is the cerebrum doing? Because it is the one that is actually showing up so much. It is the one that actually controls the voluntary actions. It controls voluntary actions. So for example, right now, if you want to do something, you will actually think about it first, okay? You will think about it and then you will act. So basically the brain, the cerebrum part of the brain, it is the one that controls those voluntary actions. Okay, voluntary actions is basically something that you choose to do on your own. So it is something that you choose to do consciously. For example, right now I'm choosing to speak, I'm choosing to hear, I'm choosing to sit, I'm choosing to move. All of those are voluntary actions. But for you to be able to carry out those actions, you carry them out using your brain. You cannot be able to even move a finger if your brain is dead, Kratos. You cannot be able to move a finger. You cannot be able to move any part of your body. You cannot be able to execute anything you cannot be able to do anything without your brain. In fact, your brain is the biggest tool that you have in your body, biggest than anything than ever, bigger than what you guys can imagine, because basically the brain is the one that allows you to be human. It allows you to live in the body. Okay. Yeah. But you have that part of you that is that is consciousness. Okay. You might wish to do certain things But if your brain is not working, you won't be able to do them. You can only do those things if your brain is working. So your brain is the one that is controlling each and every voluntary action that you do. Whenever you decide to say, I'm waking up, your brain is the one that will enable you to wake up. Because basically, moving your hand, simply moving your hand, you don't really move your hand, you move it using your brain. It's just that it's something that we do so naturally in such a way that you don't even notice, or we tend to forget what is causing this to happen. Yes, you as a person consciously, you want to wake up, you want to do this, you want to do this, you want to do this, but your brain enables you or your wishes to be fulfilled, or the voluntary actions that you wish to be done, it ensures that they are done. So the cerebrum controls all voluntary actions. Everything that you decide to do, it is controlled by the brain. Whenever you lift anything up, whenever you do anything that you do, any action that you do, your brain is the one doing it. Okay. But you are controlling it, of course, right? Yeah. So the you part is controlling the brain. So we might as well say that you are not your brain. Yeah. There is a you beyond the brain, the one that controls the brain, because you decide what to do. But what actually causes those physical movements or those actions to be implemented, it is the brain, it's the cerebrum specifically, right? So now the cerebrum has got three functions, not only to just control these voluntary actions. The cerebrum receives and interprets sensations from the sense organs, which is exactly what I told you when we began with this session. Okay, told you guys when we began with the sessions that basically you do not hear because of your ears, you do not see because of your eyes, but the brain is the one that interprets everything. So each and everything that you can perceive right now, you can perceive that this is my voice. You have got memory inside your brain. Okay, you can perceive that this is a phone in front of you. You can perceive that this is a book next to you. All of that, or all of that perception or interpretation, it is the brain that is doing that. So the brain receives and interprets sensations from sense organs. So basically, what's the whole point of having different sense organs? For example, what's the point of having an ear if the ear is not the one hearing? Basically, the ear is just acting as a pathway for sound to enter into your brain. The eye, it is just acting as a pathway for light to enter inside your brain. But your brain will change that and it will interpret it as what? As vision, if we're talking about the eye. It will now differentiate it into colors and all of that. So basically, the brain is the one that is interpreting all sensations that are coming from different sense organs. That is why we are made with different sense organs, but all of them, they just want to send one message to the brain, and then now the brain will interpret it. And then the cerebrum is also controlling higher thought processes. Okay, so forgive me if I keep on saying the brain, but I'm trying to refer to the cerebrum. But the cerebrum, basically, it is the brain itself. It is the biggest part of the brain itself, right? So the cerebrum, it controls higher thought processes. Whenever you are thinking about something, you are thinking using the cerebrum. So the cerebrum, it is controlling those thought processes. So the cerebrum, it is so much significant than we may know. So it is what? Very significant. So the cerebrum, that is the biggest part of the brain. We also have got another part known as the cerebellum. Okay, so I'm going to skip from the cerebrum and go all the way down here to the cerebellum. So we've got part B here, which is the cerebellum. Okay, so now the cerebellum, it is the one that is responsible for coordinating all voluntary movements. Okay, so please be very careful whenever you are writing this. The function of the cerebellum, it is to coordinate all voluntary movements. The term control and the term coordinates, it doesn't necessarily imply the same thing. more especially when it comes to this scenario. We say that the cerebrum, it controls voluntary actions. It's more like each and every action that you have to do, you have to think about it, or you must have a part of your cerebrum must be willing to do it. Each and every action that you do, each and every voluntary action that you do is controlled by the cerebrum. But the cerebellum, we're talking about this part, by the way, I didn't highlight it for you. This is the cerebellum. This part is known as the cerebellum. It's just found here at the base. The cerebellum, it coordinates all voluntary movements. When we're talking about the coordination of voluntary movements, whenever you have decided inside your cerebrum that you now want to lift your hand, now the cerebellum is the one that will coordinate those movements. What does the term coordinate in this case mean, or what's the difference between the coordination and the control? Basically, for you to be able to do anything, you need your muscles to move. For any movement, your muscles must move. For example, if you move your head, if you just tilt your head, guys, simply tilting your head, let's just say you are nodding your head, you are saying, you are nodding your head. When you are nodding your head, there's a lot of muscles that are moving so that your head can be able to turn left and right. If you are walking, it is muscles that are moving. So everything's about muscles as well. This is something I don't know if you guys knew, that muscles are the ones that are controlling every movement in your body. Okay, they are the ones that are coordinating the movement. But those muscles, they are controlled by the cerebellum. So the cerebellum, it is the one that kind of controls the muscles, how muscles function. So hence we say that it coordinates all voluntary movements. Guys, the cerebellum does not control the voluntary movements. The cerebrum is the one that controls. Then the cerebellum, it coordinates. If you go to a dictionary, if in fact this is your task, go to the dictionary, go and find the difference between the term control and the term coordinates, and also the term regulate. Those three terms, go and look for them. Control, coordinate, and regulate. Those three terms. You guys will go and look for those, and you guys will tell me what they mean. You say in the group what they mean. Control, coordinate, or regulate. The differences between them. But I've already tried my best to give you, to my best understanding, coordination is all about now doing the voluntary movements themselves, what's controlling those muscles to be able to move. But the control in the cerebrum is all about thinking the action before you even do it. Okay, so whenever I think right now that I now want to pick my phone, my cerebrum is the one that is controlling the action because I'm thinking about it in the first place. But now the cerebellum will be the one that coordinates that movement of my hand towards the phone, because the cerebellum actually controls my muscles. So basically, when I'm moving my muscles, the cerebellum is that part of the brain that is making it possible for me to move my muscles in a certain direction to be able to pick a certain object. Precisely so. So the brain actually works together. Those parts, they work together. You think about it using your cerebrum, then your cerebellum will control your muscles so that it can be able to reach that particular phone. So hence we say that a cerebellum has got that function of coordinating all voluntary movements, and we say that the cerebellum also controls the muscle tension. As I've already told you guys, that the muscles, they are controlled by the cerebellum. So the muscles, they can be made to be more tense, okay, so that you can try to maintain balance. We are going to do that further details whenever we get to the ear. But basically, for you guys to be able to stay balanced, I mean, why are you not falling right now? For example, you guys are aware that your head is very heavy. Your head is very heavy compared to other parts in your body. So why do you not fall if you tilt your head down? Or maybe let's just say I push you what makes you to be able to balance? Why not fall always? Why are we just not falling apart? Because if we look at the in a physics way, if you look in it in a physics perspective, if you look at the weight, it doesn't balance out. Okay. If we were to make a robot, guys, and we make a robot, let's just say we make a robot, right? And then the robot will have the same weight as a human being, the same body weight, the same weight of the head. That robot will fall down. It will not be able to balance. If you just make a random robot, okay, but basically your body is able to balance on its own. Okay, even if I push you, you can be able to balance. Even if you tilt your head downwards, you do not fall down. It's because of the cerebellum controls that muscle tension to maintain the balance. But we're going to do that further in detail when we get to the E. But basically, the cerebellum is very essential as well because it is the one that is controlling our muscle balance, muscle tensions. Because basically, your body, for it to be able to move, is all about muscles. Because you cannot be able to tell me when you are moving without moving a muscle. No, that's impossible. Basically, the movement is defined by the muscle itself. Are we clear, Kratos?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. And then now let's go to the third major part, which is the medulla oblongata. So we have got a what? We have got a medulla oblongata. I'm sure you guys have grown in African households whereby parents usually like to use the term medulla oblongata to refer to your brain. They will be like, hey, use your common sense when use your medulla oblongata. Why is your medulla oblongata not working? Hey, finally, you are here. You are doing life sciences. You guys will finally get a chance to learn what the medulla oblongata actually is. The medulla oblongata is one of the parts that are found here at the what? At the brain. The medulla oblongata is located right down here. You guys can see it here. It's located right down here. Let me just use a brighter color. So the medulla oblongata, you find it right down here. All right. So the medulla oblongata, guys, it is kind of a tube-like structure. It looks like a what? A tube-like structure. The medulla oblongata, it doesn't only stand alone. It actually connects to the spinal cord. Let me just show you the connection. So let's just say the medulla oblongata is here. This region that I'm highlighting here with a red. I am sure you guys can see this region that I'm highlighting here with red. Let's just say this is your medulla oblongata. If you keep on going down with this pipe here, this pipe-like structure, this thing that looks like a pipe, I don't know if people can see it, but this thing that looks like a pipe, it actually goes to the spinal cord. Let's just go back to the image that I was using at first, guys. So the image that I was using at first, you guys can see that the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, they are connected to one another, guys, because the brain is found inside the skull, right? We say that the brain is found inside the skull. So basically, your brain is found here. So your brain is found somewhere here. So since your brain is found somewhere here, where is your spinal cord? Your spinal cord is a tube that is connected directly to the brain. This is the tube. I don't know if people can see it. This is the tube here. So this is a tube. This is a tube known as the spinal cord. And the spinal cord is directly connected to the brain, guys, because basically those two, they make up the central nervous system. So they need to be connected. There must be a functional connection between them. So basically the brain and the spinal cord are connected to one another. So here, if we go back to my zoomed in diagram of the brain, when you go back to the zoomed in diagram of the brain, we will notice one thing here. We'll notice one thing. Here, we already know that the brain here, it is going down here. Where is it going down to? It is going to the spinal cord. Basically, this is the spinal cord connecting to the brain, guys. This is the spinal cord connecting down to the brain. So we can say that here we have got a spinal cord, though it's not labeled in this particular diagram, but this is the beginning of the what? Of the spinal cord. So this is your spinal cord. This part here that is going down here, this part that is going down here, this part that is going down here with the brain, it is the spinal cord. Did you guys all understand what I'm saying here? Yes, so that's your spinal cord, guys. Your spinal cord is connected to the brain. All right. But just before we get to the spinal cord, we have got a part known as the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata is just a part that is somewhere around this region. So it's just a part that is somewhere around this region, just before we get to the what? To the spinal cord. But basically, you guys should know that the spinal cord and the brain, they are connected to one another. Okay. So what is the function of this medulla oblongata thing? The medulla oblongata, it transmits. Guys, the word transmit, it means you are moving something from one place to another. So it transmits what we call nerve impulses between the spinal cord and the brain. So guys, since I told you that we have got the brain here on top, we have got the brain there on top, and then we have got the spinal cord here, and those two, they are connected to one another. In fact, they are connected here at the medulla oblongata. So the medulla oblongata kind of connects the brain with the spinal cord, because I already told you guys that the brain and the spinal cord, they are connected to one another indeed. Because here is your spinal cord here. There's this tube that is descending down here. That's your spinal cord. And then there's your brain on top here. So basically, the brain and the spinal cord, they're connected. We can just say in simple terms, they're connected by the medulla oblongata together. So why does the medulla oblongata have to connect the brain and the spinal cord? So that we can be able to transmit, or so that it can be able to transmit the nerve impulses between the spinal cord and the brain. So the sole reason for the spinal cord and the brain to be connected is so that they can be able to share messages between one another. Because guys, I told you guys that the central nervous system, it is made of the brain and the spinal cord. So in other words, the brain and the spinal cord, they are making up the central nervous system, the one that is getting all reports or all messages from different parts of the body. So basically, in simple terms, I'm trying to say that those two, they need to somehow communicate with one another. The brain and the spinal cord, they need to be able to send messages with one another. Those messages, we say they are known as nerve impulses. So whenever you hear the term nerve impulses, those are the messages, and those messages, they are carried by the nerves. That's why we call them nerve impulses, because those messages, they are carried by the what? By the nerves. Remember, guys, I already told you that the nerves are these a bluish like things here that you are finding here. There's a bluish like sticks. What are they doing? They actually transmit messages, or they transport messages from different parts of the body. Still remember mentioning here that the nerves here, they are transporting information from different parts of the body to the central nervous system. So basically, the medulla oblongata can also do a similar function. It transmits that message, or those messages. Those nerve impulses are simply a message. Okay, it's just simply a message. So if you guys didn't know, the organs actually communicate with one another. So if you guys thought that the body is just simply a body alone, the organs communicate with one another. The brain communicates with the spinal cord. The skin communicates with the brain. The eye communicates with the brain. And it's like communication, real communication, real-time communication. And they use a certain language, which is the nerve impulses. So they kind of deliver message. In fact, organs deliver messages between one another, okay, for you to be able to live. So for you to be able to see, for you to be able to hear, it's all about the transmitting of that message from one point to another. But usually it is from a certain point to the central nervous system, because it's the one that is coordinating everything, controlling each and every part. So the medulla oblongata here, it is serving as a bridge that allows information, or that allows nerve impulses to be able to move from the spinal cord to the brain, and vice versa, from the brain to the spinal cord. So the messages, they don't only have to move from the brain to the spinal cord, or from the spinal cord to the brain. No, the messages, they can move either ways. So a message can be sent from the brain to the spinal cord, or a message can be sent from the spinal cord to the brain. And all of that is facilitated by this medulla oblongata. Due to its position there, it's able to allow the messages to move from the spinal cord to the brain. But you don't call them messages, grade 12. You call them nerve impulses. They are actually carried inside the nerves. Those messages are carried inside the nerves. And then the medulla oblongata, this one, it controls. So we are bringing the control factor again. So the medulla oblongata controls involuntary actions. So I've already told you guys about voluntary actions. Voluntary actions are the actions that you choose to do, actions that you do consciously. Okay, for example, I'm choosing to do this at this point. I'm choosing to go and make some food. I'm choosing to close the laptop. I'm choosing to run. All of that is voluntary action. And I already told you that is being protected, is being controlled by the cerebrum and the cerebellum. But now the medulla oblongata, it controls the involuntary actions. The involuntary actions are those actions that you do not have to control by your will. Those are the actions that the body does on its own to survive. As much as we have got things that we wish to do as humans, but the body has got certain things that it does on its own without human interference or without our choices. So those are known as involuntary actions. Involuntary actions such as heartbeat as well as the breathing rate is not something that we choose for us to do. We cannot choose for ourselves to breathe right off. We don't choose to breathe, by the way. If you knew you do not choose to breathe, it's because your body is created to be like that. Your body is made in such a way that breathing and having a heartbeat is a natural process, is something that happens on its own. But now what controls that is the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata is that part of the brain that controls involuntary vital actions such as breathing and the heartbeat. You cannot control how fast your heart is beating. Not really. You cannot be able to do that. I mean, let's just say, for example, your heart starts beating faster due to maybe blood pressure. You cannot control it. You cannot control the breathing rate. Okay? Let's say some trigger happens inside your body and you start breathing heavily. You cannot control that. Shortness of breath. You cannot control that just because there is some organ that is responsible. And this part in the brain is known as the medulla oblongata. Controls involuntary actions such as heartbeat and breathing. Is that clear, Gretos? All right.
Yes.
Now, let's now go to the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus. Okay. Bear in mind, grade 12, the hypothalamus is not the hypophysis, because you guys often confuse the hypothalamus and the hypophysis. Those two are different things. So we've got a hypothalamus and we also have got a hypophysis. I'm going to show you what the hypophysis is. But the hypothalamus, let's try to identify it from this diagram. So it is just this empty space that we have here. It looks like an empty space according to this diagram's way of drawing, but this space here just below the corpus callosum. I'm gonna do the corpus callosum after it. But this space here is known as the hypothalamus. Very important part as well. In fact, most parts of the brain, they are very important. So this is your hypothalamus, the one highlighted in purple, right? So the hypothalamus, what is the hypothalamus? The hypothalamus is the control center for hunger. It is the control center for thirst. It is the control center for sleep, body temperature, as well as general emotions. So basically, whenever you feel hungry, it's your hypothalamus that is reporting the hunger. In fact, it's your hypothalamus that is perceiving the hunger. If you don't eat for a long time, of course, even when you're feeling sleepy, you want to sleep, or you are thirsty, or maybe it's very hot out there, your hypothalamus is the one that actually controls all of those. So basically, the hypothalamus is a control center for hunger, thirst, sleep, body temperature, as well as emotions. So your emotions are also controlled by the hypothalamus. Talk about crying, talk about laughing, talk about everything that has to do with that. It is all controlled by the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is just the control center for hunger, for thirst, sleep, and body temperature, as well as general emotions. Now, the last part, this one I want you to pay very careful attention to, because you might misunderstand it. You might be able to label it, yes, but understanding it is very important. So we've got a corpus callosum. So we've got a corpus callosum. All right, let's just try to look at the corpus callosum. So the corpus callosum, it is this whole part here that I'm going to surround with this shape. You guys will be able to recognize such a shape in the exam, because those diagrams, they hardly change. But basically, this is the shape of the corpus callosum. So the corpus callosum, it is very important because it is the one that glues the left-hand part, the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. So before we get there, you guys should understand that the brain is divided into two sections, or the brain has got two halves. We call them hemispheres. We don't call them two halves, but we call them hemispheres. So your brain is made up of two halves. For it to be a complete spherical brain, it has got two halves. We call them hemispheres. We call them hemispheres. So we have got a right hemisphere. We also have got a left hemisphere of the brain. So now these hemispheres, they control the sides of your body. So basically, the left hemisphere, it controls the right side of your body. Remember, guys, that your body is divided into, your body is bilaterally symmetrical. That's what you learned in grade 11. Your body is bilaterally symmetrical. It simply means that your body can be divided into two equal halves. Your body has got the same things on either sides of it. I mean, like you've got one hand on one side, which is the left side, and then you've got a right hand. You've got one right leg, you've got one left leg, all of that. So basically your body is divided into two parts. So the brain does not control the parts just in a random order, but the right hemisphere, it controls the left-hand side of the brain or of the body. So for you to be able to lift your left hand, it is the right hemisphere that is controlling it, of the brain. For you to control your right hand, it is the left hemisphere of the body that is controlling. So it's kind of opposite. Okay, so your brain has got right and left sides, but in your body, the right side is being controlled by the left hemisphere, whereas the left side is being controlled by the right hemisphere. So basically, these two parts of the brain, or these two hemispheres of the brain, they are connected, or they are glued together. Glued together by what? They're glued together by the corpus callosum. So the corpus callosum, it is this part that you're seeing here. So the corpus callosum, it is this part here that you are seeing here. This is the corpus callosum. Its primary function, it is to connect the left and the right hand hemispheres of the brain. So its primary function is to connect. So it's all about connecting the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, allowing the communications between the two of them. I said that the corpus callosum is acting as a glue because it connects the left and the right hemispheres together. Okay, because I already told you guys that the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere are the two parts of the brain. The brain is divided into a left and the right hemisphere. So this diagram that I'm showing you right now, we say it's known as a cross section of the brain. It's like you are cutting the brain in the middle section. You are cutting the brain into its two halves. So this is just one half of it. So it's known as a cross-sectional diagram. Whenever you hear the term cross section, is a diagram that you get from cutting something through its transverse section. Okay, so basically, the corpus callosum, as I've already told you, is the one that is glowing, or it is the one that is acting as a connection point between the two hemispheres. Because I already told you guys that the hemispheres of the brain, they control different parts of the body or different sides of the body. My left hand is being controlled by the right hemisphere of the brain. Then my right hand is being controlled by the left hemisphere of the brain. It is because really the brain is controlling the body essentially. So to an extent, the corpus callosum needs to be there so that the two hemispheres have got communication. Whenever we talk about communication in life sciences, communication between the organs, guys, I already told you that body organs or body parts, they communicate with one another for them to be able to accomplish a specific task. So you might think that you're only one person, but you are actually having many entities within you that are connecting and communicating with one another so that they can be able to make you what you are. So if you think about it deeply, it's something very, 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 very sacred and something very deep to say with many of your organs, they are communicating with one another. You have got millions of cells in your body. They also communicate with one another. Okay. But all of them, they are all combining to be able to form one person, one human being. Okay. So it kind of gives you an idea to say that you can have many things or many organs communicating with one another, but they are all trying to accomplish one task. It is to make you a human being that is able to live, talk, and do this and this and this. So there must be a communication between the left and the right hemisphere, so that they can be able to accomplish a task of controlling different organs and different parts of your body. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to think it deeply, you can think of us as humans. We communicate and we do things, but who are we actually making? Like if you think of us humans as organs of one body, and we are communicating with one another to be able to accomplish a certain task, who in the world are we actually trying to control here, in a sense? Because these organs, they're communicating with one another. They are doing so that you can be able to control your body. When you can be able to lift things up, you can be able to talk, you can be able to do this and this. It's millions of cells communicating with one another. So imagine us as humans. We've got billions and millions of human beings on earth, and all of us are doing something, or we are interacting with one another to be able to accomplish whose task. You guys will be able to figure that out later on. But the corpus callosum allows that communication between both the hemispheres of the thingy, the brain. All right. So now the other one is the pituitary gland, guys. The pituitary gland, we're going to talk about it in depth whenever we get to the endocrine system. The pituitary gland, it is otherwise known as the hypophysis. So the pituitary gland is otherwise known as the hypophysis. This is this gland that you find here, this round gland here that we find. It's known as a master gland, or you can say hypophysis and anything else relating to that. So that's your pituitary gland. Okay. So that's the brain in a nutshell.